And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to use the same 5 rules we used previously. The first thing you do, Jimmy, face the front, is find the axis of symmetry. The first step in solving a quadratic by making a graph is to find the axis of symmetry. What's the formula for axis of symmetry, Ian? Perfect. You are going to use negative b over 2a. That's the first thing you do, which we already know how to do that. We have already done step number 1. We're already, hopefully, proficient at that. Then we move on to step number 2, and step number 2 is to find the vertex. And again, we have already found the vertex. We already know how to find the vertex. Who remembers step 2? To find the vertex, Christian, what do you do? Good. Substitute the axis of symmetry. So substitute negative b over 2a, whatever answer you get, into the x and solve. So you do negative b over 2a first, and you get an answer. Then you take that answer for step number 2, and you put it into the original problem wherever there's an x, and find an answer. Step 3, who can remember step 3 for graphing a quadratic? Arlo? We'll say substitute an x value, simplify, and graph. Does it matter what x value you substitute? You can use any number. We suggest you only go one number to the left or the right of the axis of symmetry. Just because the bigger the numbers, the harder it is to graph. But so far, these are all the same rules. Find the axis of symmetry, negative b over 2a. Find the vertex. Substitute negative b over 2a into the x and solve. Then we substitute any number we want, simplify and graph it. What's step number 4? It's the same as step 3. Should you pick the same number? No, you should pick a different number. You should pick a different number. If you pick 1, you should pick 2 the next time. Ian. If you pick negative 1, then you pick negative 2 the next time. It doesn't really matter which one you do. Go to the right or go to the left. It's not going to mess you up either way. And what's the last step, Andrew? Perfect. Reflect and connect. So we haven't changed anything. These 5 rules are the same 5 rules we learned previously. The only difference today, ladies and gentlemen, is that you need to realize that every quadratic function or equation, every single quadratic function or equation can be rewritten. You have multiple ways of writing every single problem. Are you familiar with this? Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. What's that called? That's standard form. Y equals, and then you have your ax squared plus b. This is your quadratic. Or you could have it written in function form, correct? F of x stands for function form. Do these mean the same thing? Yeah. Today, we want it written like this. This is our goal today. What's the only difference that I'm doing? Ian? I highlighted it. What else is different? What's different about this? Katie? Yeah. Instead of f of x, it's 0. Or instead of y, it's 0. That's what our problems need to look like today. They must be 0 equals. You cannot have any, if it says y equals, we just take out the y and put a 0. All right. Fold on the dotted line. And glue into your notebook. So once you have your graph glued in, or your graphs glued in, we have 3 examples we're going to work through. And the first example we're going to work through is starting right here, is 2x squared minus 2 equals 0. So the first thing let's do is let's identify the A, the B, and the C. Let's make sure we understand, we remember this concept. So looking at 2x squared minus 2 equals 0, what's the A value? Is 2. What's the B value? 0. Remember, the B value touches the x that is not squared. And in this problem, there is no x that is not squared. And what's the C value? -2. Perfect. Just so that you can identify, remember getting into standard form. Let's flip this open and I'm going to rewrite the problem. 2x squared minus 2 equals 0, just so I don't have to go back and forth. Christian. Step number 1. Axis of symmetry, negative b over 2a. So negative, and what was the b value? 0 over 2 times, what was the a value? 2. You can type it in your calculator, negative 0 over 2 times 2. Or you can know anytime there's a 0 in the numerator, what's the answer automatically? 0. That's my axis of symmetry. So I find 0 and make my dotted vertical line, because that's going to be the perfect middle of the graph. Step 2 was to find the vertex. So you substituted negative b over 2a, which what was our answer to negative b over 2a?
0.
So we're going to substitute 0 into the x and solve. So I go back to the original problem. Instead of x, I'm going to put in 0. So 2 times 0 squared minus 2. My x value is 0. I put in 0. And what do I get out as my answer? 0 squared is times 2 is minus 2, negative 2. So that's my vertex. 0, negative 2. Step 3, pick a number, any number. You could do negative 1. So we substitute negative 1 because it's one space away. Could you have done positive 1? Yes. Anytime you substitute a negative value, remember to put it inside parentheses. 1 times 1, negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Times 2 is minus 2 is, so negative 1, 0. Step 4. What number should we substitute? You could do negative 24. I'm going to try negative 2. So negative 2 squared, negative 2 times negative 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, minus 2 is 6. So negative 2, 6. Am I done? What do I do?
I have to
Reflect. And connect. This is exactly the same as what we just did, right? However, what it's asking is, what's the answer? And ladies and gentlemen, the solution, the answer to this problem is wherever it crosses the x-axis. The zeros are the solution. So the solution, this problem, this quadratic, has two solutions. X equals what? Negative 1. And x equals positive 1. If you just graph it, that's not enough. You must take it that next step further and find the solutions. If the value of y is 0, my x answer is negative 1 or positive 1. So we have x squared minus 8x minus 16 equals 2x squared. What's wrong with this example? Yeah, it's not equal 0. There's a 2x squared that I need to move over here. So minus 2x squared minus 2x squared. 1x squared minus 2x squared. Negative 1x squared minus 8x minus 16 equals 0. Now, are we ready to use this problem? So sometimes you're going to have a problem that has pieces that need to be moved. So let's flip open our flap. Let's write the problem. Negative 1x squared minus 8x minus 16 equals 0. Right? Yep. And let's solve. Step 1. What's the first thing we do? Negative b over 2a. What's the b value? So I'm going to do negative 8 over 2 times negative 1. Again, ladies and gentlemen, anytime you use a negative number for substitution, substitute it using parentheses. Negative 8 changes to positive 8. Ian, what do you get? What? What's 8 divided by negative 2? Negative 4. That's our axis of symmetry. Ian, did you figure it out? Did Arlo help you? Are you using the negative sign or the minus sign? Bring it back here and I'll look at it. All right, once we get negative 4, once we get our answer to negative b over 2a, we move on to step number 2. What do you do with that negative 4? What's step number 2? Substitute back into the original equation. So instead of x, I'm going to substitute negative 4. And again, we're using a negative number, so please substitute using parentheses. Negative 1 times negative 4 squared minus 8 times negative 4 minus 16. Negative 1 times negative 4 squared minus 8 times 4 minus 16. What do you get? Negative 1, you put, or negative 4, you put in negative 4, what answer do you get as your solution? Ian? 0? So that's my vertex, negative 4, 0. Step 3, pick a number. What number do you want to pick? You could pick negative 13. I wouldn't suggest it. Negative 5, 1 space to the left. Perfect. Could you pick negative 3? You could go to the right. So you substitute a value. What is negative 1 times negative 5 squared minus 8 times negative 5 minus 16? Negative 1. So negative 5 goes in, negative 1 comes out. So my ordered pair is negative 5, negative 1. Am I done yet? I substitute one more time. I chose negative 5, so the next number I'm going to choose is negative 6. And then because you're using a negative value, it's very important to substitute using parentheses. Type it in your calculator. Negative 1 times negative 6 squared minus 8 times negative 6 minus 16. Negative 6 comma what? Negative 4, do you guys agree? So negative 6, negative 4. Am I done? Last step is reflect and connect. How come this one opens down? What tells you it's going to open down, Arlo? Yeah, the A value is a negative value, so I know it's going to be upside down. But this picture is not enough, because we are looking for the solution, and the solution is the 0. How many solutions does this parabola, this quadratic, have? 1. Katie, what is it? X equals negative 4. And you're done. You have to write the solution. Tony. Yeah, once you got to your vertex, you could have said, oh, that's exactly on there. I don't have to do anything. But like on problem number 1, did you have to do the graph? Yeah. So if you can see that, it doesn't happen very often, but... All right, so you try this one. So x squared plus 6x plus 10 equals 0. So step 1, negative b over 2a is negative 6 over 2 times 1, which is negative 3. Am I correct? Then step 2 is to take that value and put it back in the original problem. Negative 3 squared plus 6 times negative 3 plus 10 equals 0. 9 minus... So 1, do you get positive 1?
Yeah.
Negative 3, positive 1. There's my vertex. Then I pick 2 values. I'm going to pick negative 2 as my first one. Could you have picked negative 4? You bet. So negative 2, 4 minus 12 plus 10, positive 2. Negative 2, positive 2. And 4, I'll pick negative 1. One minus 6, negative 1 comma 5. Once I've substituted and found my ordered pairs, I reflect and connect. However, the graph is not enough. We look for the x-intercepts. So what's the solution to this quadratic? There is no solution. This does not have an answer. This has one answer, and this has 2 answers. So all you're doing is graphing, which you've already had practice with. The new part is then finding the solution. What is the y-intercept?